Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. We're trending towards one of the craziest college football coaching carousels that we've ever seen. 2021 may be the gold standard. That was the year that LSU and USC fired coaches early. Florida, ironically, and Miami a little bit later. And of course, when LSU and USC hired their coaches, Oklahoma and Notre Dame ended up opening up. That's probably the gold standard for craziest coaching carousels. I think we are headed full speed ahead towards the craziest carousel we've probably ever seen. We know UCLA's open, Virginia Tech's open, Arkansas's open, Oklahoma State's open, Oregon State opened up last weekend, and the shocker of all shockers, Penn State opened up as well. Incredibly, the job that we've all had our eye on since basically like the beginning of last year is in Gainesville, Florida with Billy Napier. Billy Napier, to this point, still has his job as Florida is currently sitting at 2-4 overall. They play Mississippi State at home this weekend before their second bye. Well, why we're talking about Billy Napier? One, I mean, if you could, I know Circa Sportsbook in Vegas does not do odds on stuff like this, but imagine if you could have gotten odds on James Franklin being fired before Billy Napier this year. I don't think anybody could have gotten odds on that. Probably would have been, minus 10,000 or plus 10, whatever. The point I'm trying to make, no one had Billy Napier surviving this long if the team went this bad. But I will say, it does increasingly feel like win or lose, actually, I think this might be Billy Napier's last weekend as the Florida Gators head coach. We've had multiple reports over the course of the week. I may have thrown up a tweet myself based on what I'm hearing, but let's give a little background, a little context. Billy Napier, you know the deal with Billy Napier, but a couple things. One, I actually thought going into the first bye for Florida this year that Billy Napier might actually be gone. That was right after the Miami game. I was told that a big part, maybe the only reason that Billy Napier saved his job after the Miami game, after 4 weeks when the team was 1-3, was because of the 4-game redshirt rule, essentially saying players have to play in a 5th game and they cannot redshirt at that point. And so basically, if you fire Billy Napier after 4 games going into the first bye, then a lot of your best players may end up transferring, opting out of the season, whatever. I only bring it up because I think he could have been gone after the first bye, but they're going into their second bye. And at the beginning of the week, I actually started to hear some things like, oh, I think this is actually going to happen. But at the same time, it's not just me. And I'll get to what I tweeted out in a minute. But some really credible people in the college football space are really starting to talk about this thing like it's a certainty. Let's start with Josh Pate. I think everybody knows Josh Pate, huge college football YouTuber, have an immense amount of respect for everything that he has built on his platform. And the thing about Pate, I don't know him well. We've conversed here or there, but he's not the type of guy that just throws stuff against a wall. So I believe this was his Sunday show. I think I started to see the clip begin to circulate Tuesday, Wednesday of this week. Here is Josh Pate talking about the fate of Billy Napier on his show.
How much gas was in the tank for Florida was what I wondered. Not enough. I think Napier is likely out. That's not my opinion. That's talking to people around Florida today. I think Billy Napier is going to be out. It may be after this upcoming game and they've got a bye, but I do believe that he's going to be out, and I do believe the Florida job is going to come open. I don't like it. I think it makes sense, though. Like if you don't have to sell me on the logic behind it, I get it. He's had time. The result's not good enough for you. I get it. This one would be infinitely less egregious than James Franklin to me. So if that's the way it goes, that's the way it goes. I love Billy Napier, so I'm not gonna trash him. Do I play favorites on the show? Absolutely, I do, and that's one of my guys there. But it is a bottom line business, and the bottom line there is it has not been good enough. So I understand it. I do get it, and I think you'll see action on that front in the not too distant future.
Give Pate credit for saying what he said. Clearly, he has a relationship with Billy Napier. Clearly, it isn't easy. But we in the media have a job to do. I have relationships in this business, college football and college basketball. But sometimes you have to have tough conversations about people that you like. And again, to reiterate, I don't know Josh Pate well enough to, I don't speak for anybody, but I certainly don't know him well enough to speak for him. I don't think he puts that out there if he is not very close to certain that Billy Napier's final weekend will be this season. But then we follow that piece of audio up with another report via USA Today, Matt Hayes. Matt Hayes on Wednesday put out a report basically saying that boosters had already met with Scott Strickland. There was money involved. Money changed hands. Matt, you could pop up the tweet so I could just share it. This was from Matt Hayes. Florida AD Scott Strickland met with influential boosters Tuesday. The result, Gators coach Billy Napier could be fired as soon as this weekend. Really quick before we get to my tweet, as a follow-up to that, I've seen differing reports about the validity of that report. And I'll be honest, this feels like some good old Gator infighting down in the swamp, quite literally and figuratively. Listen, I don't think USA Today publishes that if they don't feel very confident in the reporting. Different sources closer to Florida are saying that's not true. That feels to me like maybe the administration did not want this out this week, did not want the players to have to show up at the stadium knowing that their coach may be fired. But I bring it full circle because I put out a tweet following the Matt Hayes report. And you guys know where I stand. I don't care about breaking stories. I do share what I know, though, and what I think I know, and what I've heard, and what I have heard. I'll just read my tweet verbatim. Since everybody else is reporting it, I'll add. Multiple people in and around Florida athletics have told me they expect Saturday will be Billy Napier's last game at Florida, heading into a bye under 500 in year 4. By the way, I actually meant that as in the 4th year, the program is under 500 over that time, but he certainly will be under 500 even if they win on Saturday. He's also 0-14 versus ranked opponents away from the swamp. It is time. So I had a lot of people kind of respond. Like I said, I don't speak for Josh Pate, but I will speak for myself. I don't put stuff out there unless I'm hearing it, unless I'm confident. And I'll tell you a little bit about what I have heard over the last couple of days. So what I heard, one, even coming into this week, is that basically this was going to be it. Again, it's the second bye. And by the way, let me even backtrack. I heard people, because I had people ask me, I had even credible media members like, well, if you know he's not the guy, just fire him now. And it's like, okay, but let's put on our big boy hats here and let's use our big boy brains and let's have a real conversation. The reason that I believe he even made it this long, again, was because of the 4-game redshirt rule. If there is no 4-game redshirt rule, I'm not surprised if he gets fired after the Miami loss, which dropped them to 1-3 back at the end of September. I'll be honest. I feel like, and I talked to somebody close at Florida, I think as soon as he lost to South Florida, he knew it was over. I'll tell you this, a little bit of a side story, and by the way, we're going to have plenty of time to talk about this on Sunday as well. But, assuming that everything happens. But the South Florida game, I could see the energy come out of him. I was watching that game live, come out of him, come out of the players. And I think he knew at that point there was no coming back from a South Florida loss, especially with the schedule that they had. I mean, just think about how different this season is if you beat South Florida. All of a sudden, you win that game right now. Instead of being 2-4, you're 3-3. All the teams you lost to are ranked in the top 12, 15. You beat Mississippi State. You're 4-3. There's winnable games left on the schedule. But that South Florida loss, I think, took the wind out of the sails. But I had people saying to me, well, if you know you're going to fire him, why are you waiting? Well, here's the real. Listen, let's use our big boy brains again. The bottom line is that they are going into a second bye. You have time to make a clean break right now. And I don't think the school wanted this to get out. So really quickly, what I know, what I think I know, what I've been told over the last couple of days. One, I was told by somebody, kind of in and around the whatever, that basically, hey, get ready, something's happening. That was kind of earlier in the week. And then I'll be honest, I actually talked to somebody who maybe is in the facility on a day-to-day basis. And it's like, dude, it's weird here. Practices have been light here. There's almost a resignation within the coaches here. I saw my buddy Trey Wallace report also that, multiple people in that building are already starting to look for an exit strategy and other jobs. And so, listen, I just think there's so much smoke. I think in some ways you have to make the move this weekend because there has been so much smoke. I mean, imagine bringing Billy Napier back out of the tunnel following the bye for the Georgia game. I mean, I think it would almost be an embarrassment to Billy Napier. It's not going to work. It isn't working. On Sunday, if he is fired, or Monday or whenever, we'll go through everything. But listen, it's year 4. He's under 500, 0-14 away from the swamp against ranked opponents. Hasn't beaten LSU very much. Hasn't beaten Tennessee. Miami has embarrassed him 2 years in a row. It's just time. Doesn't mean he's a bad person. Doesn't mean he's a bad human being. So it's time. Like I said, I believe it's going to happen. Like I said, I have people in the building that have said that they expect it to happen this weekend. And really quickly, and again, we'll have plenty of time on Sunday or Monday or Tuesday, probably all of next week, to talk about what's next. But really quickly, I'll say this about kind of post Billy Napier and the future of Florida football. Super consequential hire in this 12-team playoff era. Listen, we know the history of Florida football. We know the highs, the lows, and what's in between, right? We know that there have been multiple coaches just in my lifetime that have won national championships. Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer. And Urban Meyer. I think we also know that the last 3 or 4, there's been ebbs and flows, but largely have been misses. Will Muschamp, disaster. Jim McElwain, a couple SEC championship games, but you never really felt like they were a real contender. And then Dan Mullen, in hindsight, certainly doesn't look that bad. Played for an SEC title, a couple 10-win seasons to start, but things did go sideways towards the end. You get rid of Billy Napier, this is a big boy hire. And I think as far as looking ahead, there's a couple things that are intriguing to me. First of all, who is actually making the hire? So Scott Strickland, we talked a few weeks ago, he did get an extension. He is not going anywhere. Last year at this time, we thought that Billy Napier and Scott Strickland were tied together, and maybe part of the reason that Billy Napier even kept his job last year was because Scott Strickland himself was on the hot seat. But Florida gets hot late last football season. Basketball wins a national championship. Scott Strickland gets a raise, or at least an extension. I don't know about a raise. And so you think that everything's going well. What I've been told is I'm not positive that he is going to be able to make this hire. And I think some of the big money boosters are really going to have a strong and definitive say in this hire and in the decision that gets made. So we'll see what happens there. I think we'll see what happens as far as candidates are concerned. As far as candidates, let's just talk about them a little bit here. And Matt, you can certainly monitor for anything Florida related if there's anything good in the chat. But one, I'm curious if Scott Strickland makes the hire. We saw the report. I don't know, this report came out on like a Friday afternoon, kind of after we had been done recording for the weekend. But did you guys see the Ryan McGee report a few weeks ago that Florida boosters were basically going around last November saying we've already negotiated with Lane Kiffin. It's a done deal. And so I just bring it up because to me, that's the first candidate, right? And I know that Lane Kiffin is a candidate for all of these jobs, but I think two things can be true. I think there's a couple that maybe he was interested in that weren't necessarily interested in him. The last time Florida opened, I thought he should have been a candidate. He did not appear to be. The last Alabama, I thought he should have been a candidate. Alabama was not going to hire him. And so there have been good jobs that I just don't, LSU was another one. Scott, what's his name? Scott Woodward. Didn't believe that he was a big enough name. Wanted Brian Kelly. Okay, whatever. How's that working out for you? Your offense can't move the football, but whatever. So the point I'm trying to make is Lane Kiffin's name always pops up. I don't know how much of a realistic candidate he's been for some of these schools, and I don't know how many of these jobs that have wanted him he has actually wanted. The big one, obviously, was Auburn. We know about that. We know the backstory there. Many people believe he basically verbally accepted the job, and his daughter was just like, I don't want to leave Oxford. I just got here. She was in high school at the time. And so I bring it up because Lane Kiffin has been open to listening to other overtures. And I do think not only is he the number one candidate, but I do think this is one that he would absolutely positively listen to, right? This is a situation where it's a better job than Ole Miss. Listen, Ole Miss is incredible. We all kind of understand that he's maybe hit a ceiling there. I mean, there's only so many levels more you can go up to at Ole Miss better than, consistent 10-win seasons. And it's a tough job, and he has done as well as he can do there. I think Florida is absolutely a job where national championship aspirations and goals are realistic. And I think beyond that as well, like the family stuff. His daughter's now in college. She, at least as of 3 weeks ago, had a boyfriend that's taken up her time. We all know, and I'm not getting into the dating life of an 18 or 19-year-old. She's dating an LSU football player. she's not living in the house. And so I think now, if you're going to make the move, makes more sense than it did 3 or 4 years ago when Auburn opened up in 2021. Beyond that, with Kiffin, again, I just think it makes sense. What I will say is the counter to that can be true as well. If Ole Miss makes a real run here, we talked about it with Cignetti and Penn State a few days ago, is if Ole Miss makes a real run here, I mean, they could be playing into early to mid January. And if that's the case, he ain't taking your job because you can't wait until 10th. And so if you're a Florida fan, it's kind of that fine line of, you want Lane Kiffin to be good enough where you can feel good. Like, you don't want him to go on a 4-game losing streak, right? But you don't want him to be so good that he's maybe playing for an SEC title, that he's playing, he's getting a first-round bye in the college football playoff. Because if he gets a first-round bye in the college football playoff, we know what that means. We know it means that he's coaching until at least January 1st and maybe much further if he keeps having success. And so I just bring it up because it's that fine line. You don't want him to stink, but you don't want him to be too good. Weirdly, I think Florida fans should be rooting for Georgia this weekend as Georgia hosts Ole Miss. An old loss on the resume for Lane Kiffin might not be the worst thing for Florida fans that want Lane Kiffin. As far as other candidates, again, whenever this does happen, and again, I think it would be insanity for it not to happen sometime between the end of the game Sunday and whenever Florida takes the field against Georgia in 2 weeks from now. But once it happens, we'll talk more candidates. I think there are a few other ones that are out there. There seems to be a belief that Marcus Freeman can be gotten out of Notre Dame. Only Marcus Freeman knows that. He's already been linked to Penn State. We may be talking about that a little bit later in the show. But I bring it up because if Marcus Freeman is available, I think that's absolutely a call you have to make. This is a guy that at a Northeast religious school with zero recruiting footprint is consistently bringing in top 5, top 10 recruiting classes with real academic restrictions. There's no disrespect to Florida, which I know is actually a very good public school, but can you imagine him in Florida recruiting the way that he recruits at Notre Dame? Now imagine him at Florida with, 35, 40 top 100 prospects and the NIL that they have and all that. I think he'd put together a monster. It's just a question of, is he actually willing to leave Notre Dame? And if he's willing to leave Notre Dame, would Florida be the spot for him? Also, I think the other big name that has popped up for Florida, Eli Drinkwitz. Eli Drinkwitz is not happy that his name is in the news. We'll get to some audio from him a little bit later when we actually talk about the Arkansas job. He's not a candidate at Arkansas, but one of his assistants is. But I just bring it up because that name has very much floated around. And I think Eli Drinkwitz is in kind of the same mold as Lane Kiffin, certainly not from a personality perspective, but from the perspective that, I don't know how many people know this. Missouri's coming off back-to-back 10-win seasons. 10-3 last year, 11-2 2 years ago. They beat Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl the last year before the 4-team college football playoff. And you kind of feel like, has he kind of hit a ceiling at Missouri? I know they've had historical success. I just don't know how much more you can realistically be expected to do than what he's already doing. So I think he'd be open to the possibility of moving, even though he's mad at media members for doing their jobs. One thing I will say, and I feel pretty confident in saying this, I talked to somebody this week. If you're a Arkansas fan that wants John Summerall, an Arkansas fan that wants Alex Golesh, a Kentucky fan, an Auburn fan that's hoping John Summerall is your next head coach, I don't know that they're going to go the G5 route again. Talking to somebody that I know, that I trust, there's a reason, Billy Napier, what's his nickname? Every Florida fan knows. They call him Sunbelt Billy. I don't think you can go back to the G5 after you just got the hot G5 candidate 3-4 years ago, and he has completely crashed and burned and very completely publicly, obviously been in over his head at Florida. And so I don't think John Summerall would be a realistic candidate there. I don't, maybe Golesh because he had the win in the swamp you could talk yourself into. But I think, again, they're going after big names. I love when schools do this. I don't think you should be afraid to call up big names. And I just think what's going to be more interesting as this whole situation unfolds, assuming, again, that Billy Napier does get fired this weekend, I think it's just going to be interesting to see who's actually making this hire. Does Scott Strickland, the AD, actually have final say? Or is it up to boosters? Is it up to somebody else? Is there a search firm involved? How sticky does this thing get? But yeah, we'll see what ends up happening. I do think Billy Napier is out after this week. By the way, if he's not out by Tuesday or Wednesday, Torres' credibility is going to be in question. But like I said, I have to share what people that are more informed than I am are telling me. And I had multiple people around that Florida program tell me this is probably it for Billy Napier. So we'll talk more about it over the course of the weekend.